Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of the California Clays podcast. I'm your host, Henning. Today's guest is someone who brings a whole new level of perspective and purpose to the sport. His name is Theo Ribbs. Theo is the 2023 Browning Briley champion, the 2024 North American FITASC champion, and a member of the 2025 Team USA for FITASC. In this episode, Theo shares some very personal experiences, including moments that touch on race and his path as the only Black professional in the sport. Some of what he shares may include direct references to situations. Now, these are his experiences in his own words. And as always, the goal of this podcast is to create a space for honest stories, thoughtful conversations, and growth within the sport we all care about. So thanks in advance for listening with an open mind. Before we jump in, if you're listening on YouTube, do me a quick favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment to let us know what you think. These stories deserve to be heard, and your support helps make that happen. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Theo Ribbs. Theo, thank you for joining me on the California Clays podcast.
Hey Henning, thank you for having me, man. I'm looking forward to diving into this thing and answering your questions and just giving people an education on myself and the sport. And yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you, man. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to do this. I know that I'm still like a new podcast coming out there, but I have a passion for the sport. I love interviewing folks like yourself that are good shooters, champions in the game that have really made a difference in the game too in terms of like the training and the development of it. So I'd really like to get into your story and your background and learn a little bit more about your journey through this and how you've gotten to where you've gotten so far. So would you mind maybe starting us off at the beginning and tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into clay shooting?
Yeah, so originally, my family's from San Jose, California. We've been there since the 20s. And I grew up on the San Jose Country Club. Most people know in the sport, my dad's a famous race car driver. And his hobby was always hunting. He was introduced to hunting through his grandfather at a young age, and he actually grew up on a 300-acre ranch in Northern California near Cache Creek Casino, which is actually not far from Quail Point.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so that was kind of, shooting's always been in my family, on the hunting side. And so when my dad's career started to kind of, dwindle down and, he was starting to get older in the sport, he wanted to find something to do to keep that competitive edge going, right? And so his actually older brother, my Uncle Philip, was the chief plumbing inspector of city of San Jose.
Mm.
Um, and so he was having, like a corporate event out at Coyote Valley back in the mid 90s. I want to say 95 or 6. And he invited my dad out to go shoot because he knew my dad grew up hunting. And at that point, my dad had never, shot any clay pigeons whatsoever. And so my dad's like, sure, yeah, I'll come out. And so that was his introduction to the game. And I actually went out to the event with him. I was like 5 or 6 years old at the time. And so after that, we didn't really do it very often because my dad was still racing a decent amount. And when he retired in 2001, that's when he wanted to really get into the game and started, taking me out. And I started, shooting here and there. I was still playing other sports at the time. And so it really wasn't like a big passion for me quite yet, right?
Okay.
And so after that, I want to say like 2005, I started competing myself and I loved it, man. I like competition, right? So like the practice thing was one thing for me, but the competition side of things was what really drove me to want to get better at it.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that was kind of my intro to the game.
Well, so was Coyote Valley Sporting Clays the first place that you shot at?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, and my dad had this little 410, and he put clays on the tree and just had me like put it under my armpit and just shoot them. That
Yeah.
was my introduction to it. And then once I was like 9 or 10, big enough to hold the gun myself, a little 20 gauge, I started going out and shooting here and there. And we had bought my dad bought me like a Franke 20 gauge, and I had it, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 months. I think I was like 12, and I said, dude, give me a 12 gauge, bro. Like, I'm tired of not having enough, BBs, as many BBs as everybody else, right? And, because I was shooting with my dad and his friends. And so I was like, give me a 12 gauge. She went and bought me a 391, Beretta 391. And
Nice.
yeah, man, pretty much since then, I haven't really looked back.
Right on. Yeah,
Yeah.
Coyote's a great place. I've shot there many times. I've taken a lot of clients out there when I used to work down in San Jose, and I really enjoy that property. It's a beautiful property.
Yeah.
Great. They have great stations. They have two courses. The mountain course is something that's kind of rare to shoot, but you can get one of the people to go up there and throw hand thrown targets
Yep.
for you, and it's actually a pretty unique course. I haven't seen a lot of places like that, but I haven't been there in a while. I heard something about them losing a lease, or they were in potential of losing a lease. Did you hear anything about that?
Yeah, Tim Leneve, who's a good friend of mine from that area, he actually told me, yeah, that they lost the lease. So I don't think it's going to be around much longer, man, which
Oh
is
man, that's a bummer.
yeah, it's kind of a shame, especially for me because that's the first place I ever fired a gun. And so, yeah, it's a shame, but yeah.
Man, that there's a station with the rabbit. I don't know if you remember it, or if it was the same from when you were shooting there, that comes down that hill and it's
Hmm.
really close,
Yep.
right? That fucking rabbit. For some reason, I always had a problem with that. I've wasted so many shells on that damn rabbit trying to
Uh,
get that thing.
I'll tell you a funny story about that stand. So, the exact one you're talking about comes down the hill left to right.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's been there pretty much since I've ever gone out there, and it's probably still there today. One day me and my dad are shooting the stand. My dad's missing it, missing it, missing it. And to I think the left of the stand, there's a bench. That guy went ballistic, grabbed the bench, threw it into the little creek that the stand is, right behind. And I was like, bro, oh
it's
my.
a frustrating rabbit. I mean, I'm telling you, I can hit targets, but I mean, there'd be days where I would get it right off the bat, and I'm like, yeah, finally, I got it figured out, and then I'd go back there and I couldn't hit it for the life of me. It's
Mhm.
just one of those things. I feel like it's a little bit of a timing thing, a little bit of a quiet eye lock on the target thing, but you got to set up right on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, and like you said, it's close, and the window's not the biggest either. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, but that's a fun place. So speaking of your dad, I mean, he's like a legend in the motorsports world, right? And I
mhm.
don't know much about racing at all, but I know
Sure.
he's done like every type of racing, from IMSA to Indy to truck to NASCAR, even, I believe.
Yep.
That's crazy. So, I mean, what was it like growing up with him? And then how did he influence your competitive drive?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know how my dad got involved in racing, right? So my family's been in San Jose since the 20s, and his grandfather started Ribbs Plumbing in 1923. And obviously, it's pretty rare in the 20s to have a African American business owner, right? Um, so that allowed, the success of our family business allowed my grandfather, which obviously is my great grandfather's son, to get into racing on the amateur side. And so
Right
my
on.
grandpa got my dad exposed into racing at an early age. And yeah, I mean, my dad was driving since, since he was a kid. He actually started on motorcycles. They had like a flat track in the front yard of their house. And so motorcycles and motorsports have been involved in my family for a long, long time. And so, yeah, my dad, he put all his eggs in one basket pretty much. After he finished high school, he told my grandparents said, "Hey, like, I know all my siblings are going to college, Stanford, Cal, and Santa Clara, but I don't want you guys to waste the money because I'm not going to take education seriously, but I want you to send me to Europe to start my racing career." And so they funded him to go to England and start his racing career, racing Formula Fords, and he won his first championship there. And
Right
came
on.
back and started racing sports cars, like you mentioned, did a little NASCAR, IndyCar, NASCAR Craftsman trucks. And so, yeah, man, my dad raced from 1977 to 2001. So he had obviously a really long career in the sport. And how that kind of drove my competitive nature. Everybody in my family is extremely competitive, no matter whether it's on the educational side, the business side, or athletics. Just watching my dad as a young kid, train as hard as he could to be in great shape. Obviously, you have to be in really good shape to be able to fit in the car and to go
Yeah.
fast. And so, he never had to push me in terms of to get me to go out and train hard and to get ready. I my philosophy since I was a kid was to always work hard. I never wanted to go to a shoot and feel like, oh, at the end of the shoot to be like, man, I could have done this. I could have prepared a little bit harder. I could have,
Hmm.
I want to leave no stone unturned. I want no excuses when I go to a competition. I want to be like, I'm ready. And if I do well, I know why. If I didn't do well, sometimes you have an off weekend, right? But I
Yeah.
don't want any excuses to why I didn't
You
wasn't
know,
successful.
it's interesting. So you come from a family of an entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
From essentially, a plumbing entrepreneur at a time when, like you said, there weren't a lot of African American or Black, entrepreneurs at the time, at least successful ones. From my understanding, this is maybe what you're telling me. And he did it in San Jose. Was there anything about San Jose and that dynamic that made him, as successful as he did, and then that translated into your family in terms of competition and everything else? Or do you see any kind of connection there?
So originally my family's from Louisiana. It's a funny story. My last name's not even Ribbs. Okay.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that. So my family's actually been successful since the 1800s.
Hmm.
So my great grandfather's father, my great great grandfather, his name was Felix Beck,
Okay.
and he was obviously Beck. That last name is has German origin, right? And so my family's been mixed race for a long time, and he was more white looking than he was black, right? And so he was a successful business owner himself. He owned timberland, he owned oil, and so he had five sons, and he had left his son's property when they returned from World War One.
Hmm.
And so I'm painting a picture on how my family got to San Jose, right? And so he left one of his sons 100 acres, and his neighbor had some livestock that would break his fence and come over and eat his crops, right? And he told his neighbor about it, like, hey, your cows are coming over, they're breaking my fence, they're eating my crops. Like, if it happens again, I'm gonna shoot your livestock. Happened again, shot the livestock. Guy comes over, shoots, my ancestor. Ancestor stumbles back inside, kills him. And obviously in Louisiana, you know, they were mixed race, and that his boys, you could tell they were black because their mother was black, right?
Hmm.
And so back then, obviously, they're gonna, deal with the Ku Klux Klan and whatnot, right? So he had all his boys pack up and move, try and get out, right?
Hmm.
And so a family that was helping hide them, their last name was Ribbs. And so we exchanged last names with them. And as we were making our journey to California, they were making their journey to California. They were originally going to go to Hawaii. They stopped in Oakland, and my great grandfather, Henry Ribbs, he was like, "Hey, we'll just, stay in the Bay Area." And if you go on my Facebook today, one of my friends on there is my cousin Robert Beck, who obviously is my cousin,
Hmm.
and his ancestor was the actual guy that shot and killed the dude. But he's like, "Fuck, I'm gonna keep keep our last name," and so his side of the family's the only last name with our true last name.
Okay. Interesting.
And so yeah,
That's
I mean,
amazing that you have that historical background. I can't go
yeah.
past my grandparent. Well, maybe. I think if I did some digging around, I'd probably be able to find out. But that's amazing that you have that historical background and the seeing kind of how you guys ended up in California and started from there. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, and so obviously his father funded his son, my great grandfather, to start the plumbing business. He took an apprenticeship under a black guy who was owned his own plumbing business, but it wasn't successful in my great grandfather's eyes. And so once he went through his apprenticeship, he started his own plumbing company called Ribbs Plumbing. And yeah, man, I mean, that's kind of where the success started. I mean, my dad explains him to be like a very hard-nosed guy that didn't deal with any bullshit.
Hmm.
And if you were going to do something, you do it to the best of your ability. You're
Right on.
if you're going to do something, you be successful at it.
Was it commercial, residential? Was it both?
It was both.
Okay.
So my he also built apartments. Like so, if you go to San Jose now, there's still Ribbs Lane, where there's what, three houses and two duplexes, and he built all of them as well as the apartments behind those houses and duplexes and to the side of them. And so he also, have you ever heard of Original Joe's,
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
Italian restaurant?
They actually just opened one up in Walnut Creek.
So the original one in San Jose, downtown San Jose, my family did the plumbing at
Okay.
that
Right
location.
on.
Did all the plumbing. So yeah, he did everything, man. Yeah. And so it's pretty cool that his father was pretty much the one who, is the reason our family's successful still to this day. But obviously my great grandfather's legacy in San Jose is pretty legendary. And then obviously my
Hmm.
dad doing what he did in auto racing made our name, you know, pretty famous worldwide, at least in motorsports. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man.
yeah.
Was there a specific moment when you were with your dad where, and you guys were shooting together that you thought that you could do this at a professional level, or was there someone else that made you think that?
Um, I think probably when I was in high school, when I moved to Texas, we moved to Texas the end of 2006, my freshman year of high school. And I started, it was like pretty much immediately when I got here, I started working with Dan Carlisle, started taking lessons with him. And Corey Cruz was a big name at the time, especially in Texas. And obviously, he's still a big name in shooting now.
Mhm.
But he was like a younger guy at the time and had won nationals. It was the youngest winner of nationals at the time. And so that kind of inspired me to be like, wow, I mean, look at this guy. He's super young and, clearly, one of the best shooters in the world. And so that was like, at the time, there was really no term professional shooter, right? Especially like, 2006, 2007. But I was like, this is kind of what I want to do. And so I kind of put everything I had towards it. And obviously, with the help from my dad and family on the financial side, I had all the backing I needed. But with backing, that doesn't mean you're gonna to work hard, right? You
Right.
know, you can, go out and not train and just go and compete. And, I feel like you'll be okay, but you're not gonna ever get to that next
Right.
threshold, right?
Right.
And so,
Opportunity definitely sets you up, but still the hard work that gets you there.
of
Yeah.
course. And so that was from day one. I always was a hard worker on the game. My dad thankfully bought me machines, and we had them right in our backyard in Texas in Dripping Springs, and so I was able to train every day after school, and I really sped up my learning curve because like when I got to Texas, I think it was like in B class. And then the next season, starting in 2007, I went to master like by like April or May of that year, right? Something like that. And so just sped up my learning curve along with working with Dan Carlisle, because he used to call me the sweeper. I'll just sweep behind everything, right? This is
Mhm.
before I'd ever had any lessons. And so, his help on the technical side of the game really took me to that next level.
Can I ask you about that? So, a lot of professionals have worked under Dan Carlisle, yourself, Anthony Matarese, Corey Cruz. I mean, I think there's even, excuse me, a ton more than that.
Oh yeah.
What was your experience like with him?
I love Dan, man. Um, I think he's just such a legend of the sport and his knowledge and his passion. That's for me kind of what really made me want to continue to work with him after my first lesson was the guy's so passionate and so involved and so in tuned with every little part of what's going on and is not like he's just going through the motions, right? And so that was his passion. And he's just like a very like motivated guy, always positive and like, come on, dog, work hard, come on. And he's always like pushing you, which I like because I come from a family like that. So I really
Yeah.
resonated with it.
Okay. So he motivated by pushing you. What were some of like the takeaways and like lessons you learned from him?
Yeah, obviously his technique, right? He's he kind of is the guy who really pushed the pull away method, right? Insert front edge or insert 2 or 3 inch gap and pull away. And it helped me to really, I think it's such a good technique because, at first you're conscious of what you're doing in terms of where you're inserting on the bird, but the end of the shot to finish is very instinctual, right? It's a feel process to get to that lead. You're not measuring the lead that you're going to, you're feeling it. You're inserting, you're seeing the front edge of the bird and you're breaking away, you're matching that speed initially, and then you're breaking away to the lead. So it
Mhm.
allowed me to, that's why I probably the method I use the most still is pull away because it allows you to shoot very instinctually towards the end of your shot.
Can I ask you something a little bit more specific about that? So when
Sure.
I think of pull away, and hopefully this is going to make sense, but when I think of pull away, this is the target, let's say,
Hmm.
and this is my barrel, and I'm coming into it like this, right? And then
Sure.
matching the speed
Yep.
and trying to connect with the bird and match the speed, then pull away from the target. Are you saying match into it from in front and then pull away, or like how do you describe pull away, I
Yeah,
guess?
it doesn't matter where you could start. You can insert back edge, you can insert on the bird, front edge. It just depends on speed and distance, right?
Okay.
Because if you insert on a bird that's going very fast and it's at distance, if you insert right on the front edge, man, you're gonna have to work really hard to stretch that lead, right? And so that's what I mean. Like it just depends on the distance and the speed of the bird on where you insert. More speed than anything, right? Speed equals lead, right? So it's just mainly the speed that dictates where I insert the gun on the bird.
Okay. So it's
You
not
know,
about
it's
just touching the bird and moving away from it.
no,
It's
you
it's
have to link.
connecting in the sphere of the area of where
Yes.
the bird is so that you can connect to that bird's speed and
Yeah.
merge with it in a way and pull away from it.
Yeah, because you can't just get to the front edge and then rip away from it. You can, but it's not as successful, right? You have to initially match the speed of the bird. You want that gun to go the same speed of the bird
Yeah.
for, however long, depending on, how much time you have to kill the bird in a successful way, right? And then once you match it and feel the speed of the bird, then you stretch away to the lead.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I feel like I do that a lot in FITASC because as I'm
Hmm.
mounting the bird, I feel like I'm imaginarily pointing a line at the bird anyways with where my barrel's pointed, and then I'm just merging as I connect with it, and as I mount, I'm finishing the shot. But
Correct. Yep.
I was just curious because I feel like everyone describes pull away differently. Whether it's touch the bird and pull away, touch the back edge of it, pull away. And so there's different ways to kind of think about it, but I just wanted to hear, what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, no matter what method you shoot hitting, right, you have to match the speed of the bird initially.
right,
Whether you're shooting maintain, whatever method you're using, you have to have that initial connection and matching of the speed. So, for your method to work successfully.
right. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So once you were learning the pull away method, what made you start incorporating other methods into your, shooting game?
So after working with Dan, I worked with Bill McGuire, and a lot of people know him. He's obviously a legend as well,
Yep.
and he shoots a lot of intercept, right? And that was a harder method for me to come to grips with. I don't shoot a ton of it. I shoot it when I don't have time, right? On a pair, I'll shoot the first bird intercept to give me time for the second bird. So, like if it's like a pair of quartering targets or something, where you have to kill the first bird quick to get to give yourself a good second shot, right? And so that's what started to have me incorporate intercept a little bit into my game. But to be honest, man, I mainly shoot either come from behind, swing
Okay.
through, or I'm using pull away. And I'll put in, maintain here and there, intercept here and there, or what am I trying to say? Diminishing.
Diminishing lead. Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, and
just
just to clarify again on Innistrad, because I feel like when I first started, that was what I was doing a lot of without knowing anything about any of the methods, right? Intercept
mhm.
was for me, here's the target again, and my barrel's just coming up and just kind of cutting it off. But I
Yeah.
wasn't matching it this way. It was more of like cutting it off every
Yeah.
time. And timing was a big deal there. So that's why it
100%.
probably didn't yield the results that I now have doing the other methods. Would you say that's the weakness of intercept? Is that when you're cutting it off, you're not on the line always, you're just meeting the line, but then not
Yeah,
on it?
you're meeting the line, meeting a target, you're kind of just like going to a spot. So your timing has to be really, really good, right?
Hmm.
Like you're saying, your timing's got to be good. And it's one of those methods because it's timing based and you're kind of just going to a spot that you're not spending a lot of time with the target, right? So it's not giving you really that,
Connection.
there's a little connection there.
Yeah.
I'd say like I try to connect with my body when I'm shooting intercept more than anything, trying to feel the bird because I'm not spending a lot of time with the target, right?
Hmm.
So I'm trying
Hmm.
to use my body to feel that bird initially, so at least I have some kind of feel with the target.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's a real hand-eye coordination move, right? If
Yeah,
you will.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So Bill McGuire does it for freaking great, but I don't know. It's not. I definitely don't shoot it the best.
So I think you have an interesting story, kind of similar to your dad, in the
Mhm.
sense that, this isn't a really common sport. I don't see a lot of African American or Black people shooting the sport. Um, how was that for you kind of coming up initially into the sport? Like, were you, like what made it stick with you when you were the only person kind of doing that?
So I'll kind of go back to like where I grew up and where I was raised, right? Like I grew up in San Jose Country Club in
Hmm.
the 1990s, right? So obviously there's already not a lot of black people in San Jose already, right? And so obviously we're the only family on the country club, right? So I grew up around white kids and like I told you, my family's all, is mixed race a lot. And so there's already white people in my family. And so obviously coming into shooting sports, it's, majority white. And
Yeah.
so it never really was a big deal because I was already used to that, right?
Right.
There's how I was raised and what I grew up in, all my friends growing up were white. And so it was never that big of a deal to me.
Okay.
I don't think you really notice it as a kid as much as when you start to get older and start to put things together and start to see things and start to understand. You know what I mean?
No, I
Yeah.
do. I actually really do understand this because, so I think you know this. I'm South Indian,
Mhm.
and I grew up in the Bay Area, but I grew up in a place that was predominantly white. And we were one of like three Indian families in the whole town of like 100,000 people, believe it or not, initially, like in the early 80s. And so everyone I grew up around was white as well, Latino, white, some Asian. Asian was a smaller part of the population, and I'm including myself as Asian because we're South Asian,
Sure.
or my ethnic background is at least. And so I could definitely relate to that as well. I didn't notice it, to be honest, because it was never made it a point to me. I mean, there's a couple instances where, it was pointed out to me that I'm obviously from a different background, but for the most part, I think in California it's pretty acceptable because there's a lot of, diversity throughout, regardless of where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. And so initially I never noticed anything, right? I never felt weird around anybody. And like you said, shooting in California, it's a diverse place. And so everyone, was kind of around everybody. But when I moved to Texas, when I started seeing like Confederate flag painted semi-autos, and then I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's different down here, right? When you come to the South, it's different, growing up in California. And even as a kid, I was never like treated any different or felt weird.
When did you move to
Anything like that.
Texas? How long were you in California, and when did you move to Texas?
So I was born in 91 and we moved to Texas in 2006. So I was in San Jose till I was about 15 and then we moved out at the end of 2006, October 2006, and I've been in Texas ever since.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you were competing while you were here in California?
Yeah, I shot in 2005. I started competing in 2005 was my shot a few events in 2005 and then like I said and then 2006 as well, and the first nationals I shot was '05. Yeah.
Was moving to Texas motivated by your desire to become a competitive shooter?
So When my dad retired, he was getting tired of being in California, like traffic, and he just was getting tired of it and wanted to get a ranch because that's what he grew up on as a kid. And so, he had been successful in his career and, sold his house in California and bought, 13 acres and a big house. And it was partly because he wanted to get out, but also my dad, you know, I love him to death. I mean, he pretty much moved to Texas for me because
Say it again.
he pretty much moved to Texas for me
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
because he wanted me, he knew I couldn't be as successful in shooting being in California as I could in Texas because of the target difficulty, and mainly because of the calm competitors, right? If you're competing against the best constantly, it's only going to make you better.
Right.
And if you're competing against guys that aren't quite at that level, because at the time, like mid 2000s, Texas was like the mecca of the sport, right? This is
Hmm.
where, if, at least in the U.S., was the mecca. Now it's the Southeast, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Carolinas, but at that time, everyone was here, right? And
And they
so,
were catering to to the professional and the competitive shooter mostly, right? Because
yeah,
as you know, in California, we have a ton of shotgun clubs, right? Not just
yes,
gun clubs, but we have a ton. I mean, within an hour and a half of me, there's 14 different shotgun clubs I can go to shoot any discipline that I want. I mean, literally every discipline is around me within an hour, right?
hmm,
And so, with all that said, you would think that California would be, churning out these top level professionals constantly. And I feel like a lot have come from here. I mean, you,
yeah,
Zach,
yep,
originally came from here, but you didn't stay here. You went somewhere else to get better. And I'm
yep.
curious why California kind of maybe doesn't have that ability to do that, given all the resources and clubs that we have. What do you think that is?
Yeah, like you were saying, you were alluding to, Henning. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of gun clubs, but the targets are dumbed down because it's mainly catered to corporate shooters and corporate, there's a lot of, Silicon Valley's there, right? And so they got Google and all those companies that go on have their outings at these gun clubs, but
Right.
they're not catered to the competitive shooters and like targets that we actually see at competitions, right? If you're just throwing 15, 20-yard all belly targets, man, you ain't going to get very good when you need to go shoot sometimes 50-yard targets off of towers and different speed and angles of birds. And so Texas, was very big on that and catering to competitive shooters, which my dad knew. My dad's obviously on and being in sports, like he understands competition and understands what you need to be successful, right?
Yeah.
And he knew for me to be successful, that was a move we needed to make, and I love him for it.
Well, speaking of that, has your dad talked about bringing over any lessons or mindsets from the racing world into your shooting game?
Yeah, I mean, my dad tries to always compare racing to shooting and things like that. I mean, they're not very similar.
Mhm.
But my dad's always just told me, man, like if you're gonna do it to the best of your ability and surround yourself with the right people and work hard, man, and pay attention to what you're doing and if you like for him, if he had a bad race weekend, analyze why I had a bad race weekend. Well, you can do the same thing in racing or in shooting, right? You can try and understand, okay, why did I struggle, and then you can go out to the gun club and try to have the guys set targets that are similar to the birds that you struggled on and start to get better at those birds. So
What would you say has been the most challenging part of climbing up the ranks in professional sporting clays? I mean, you did it at a time when I don't want to say it was like a nascent period in sporting clays, but sporting clays have really only been around since the 80s in California, right?
yeah.
So, we're now in 2025. And so it's been around for over, close to 40 years now. But I still feel like as an overall sport, it's still pretty young. As
Yeah.
you were climbing the ranks, what was the most challenging part for you? You've been doing it
Most
at what now for 20 years? Is that right?
almost, yeah, yeah.
20 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
20 years, yeah. The most challenging part climbing up the ranks was just initially. Like initially, I wasn't the best sub junior or junior. And, at the time, Justin Fox, who you know personally,
Hmm.
in California was like the big name. He was working with Dan Carlisle, things like that. He was like, everyone knew who he was. And so that was, initially the guy who I was competing against. And so initially it was because I'm like super competitive and I was typically always pretty good at sports growing up. I wanted to be the best. And so initially it was just kind of taking them licks early, right? And just believing in yourself that you were going to get there and you were going to be competing against this guy and giving him problems and just convincing yourself of that and not letting those early years affect you mentally to where you got down on yourself, right?
I
And
actually really love that you said that.
yeah.
Taking your licks and not being discouraged by it, because this is one of those games that no matter how good you are eventually going to be beat. You
Yes.
know, I mean, like you look at the pros who are at the top level of the game in the world, and they're constantly trading places with themselves wherever they go, right?
Hmm.
Yourself included. I mean, it's just constant,
Sure.
like the top 10 is the top 10 most of the time, 90% of the time. Once in a while, a new name will pop in there, and, someone else will kind of jump in there temporarily. But maintaining that and being able to do that for a long period of time takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of sacrifice. What do you attribute your ability to stay resilient through all that?
I think I'm just tough mentally, right? Like being raised by my dad raised me as a single father, right?
Mhm.
So I had no, other than my aunts and grandma, like those were the only kind of only women in my life and my sister. But, my dad's a pretty hard-nosed guy, if you know him. Like he doesn't deal with bullshit. And so I think just being raised by that just toughens you, right? Just toughens you mentally. And so it's just about staying tough mentally, man, and don't let anything get to you, right? Don't let nobody get under your skin or a result get under your skin, and just staying resilient and always believing in yourself, man. And that's the number one. Like we're all gonna have bad days or bad weekends or a bad stretch of shoots, but it's all about staying confident and knowing that you're gonna come out on the other side of it if you just keep grinding and working hard and understanding what you're doing wrong. That's the main part, right? Is understanding what you're doing wrong. I mean, if you're not understanding what you're doing wrong, how are you going to improve, right?
Right,
You're
right,
not. You're just going to kind of stay stagnant. You can shoot so much that eventually you'll have a good day or two, but you're going to ride that roller coaster. Our game's all about consistency, man. Like you said, you're not going to win every shoot. That's not really humanly possible. But if you can stay in that top five, top 10 on a consistent basis, then, then you're gonna have those peaks of winning. And then you'll plateau back down and have top threes, top fives, top tens or whatnot. But if you can stay in that also keeps you mentally like good,
motivated,
right? It
right.
makes you mentally
Because
like,
when we're talking like when to stay in the top 10, I mean, we're like talking about one or two targets sometimes, you
yeah,
know?
100%.
Yeah, and you may be top 20 even with three targets missed. So you're not
Hmm.
that far behind someone
Right.
to stay even in the top 20. So that's well for me that'd be a little demoralizing, but at the same time, like to your point, it's good that you're saying it in a positive light. You're like that's good enough to make you go, I'm still in it. I'm here.
Yeah.
I deserve to be here.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, at the moment, we got a guy who's kind of killing the sport at the moment. Brandon Powell, he's, shooting the best, in my opinion, the best shooter in the world right now.
Yeah.
But, some people, can get discouraged. Oh man, he's hard to beat, this and that. But me, I'm like, nah, man. I mean, he's doing a hell of a job, and I respect it. But it makes me want to just grind even harder.
Right.
And you always have to look at the whole picture. The amount of experience that guy has. He's like 38 years old, and he's got a ton of experience. And even though he's the best, he doesn't get complacent, man. That guy works hard as hell. He might be extremely talented, but a lot of people don't give him the respect on the preparation side of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'm curious, like, what do you know about his, but more specifically, what do you do right now? Like, what's your training regimen to stay sharp and stay focused so that you can compete at a high level?
Yeah, I try to at least practice like 3 to 4 days a week
Okay.
and practice with good guys, whether it's Dominic Grossi, my good buddy,
Yep.
Corey Cruz, Lane Piccolo. The good thing about being here in Houston for me now is we have a lot of good shooters, Jonathan Prince, we got so much good talent coming out and we can all push each other and help each other get better. And so that was the reason I moved here. But I've always been a guy who wants to be extremely prepared and wants to work hard. A lot of people give me flag, oh, you practice so much, this and that. I'm like, since when is being a hard worker a bad thing?
Yeah, that seems weird
You
that
know what
they'd
I'm
be giving
saying?
you a hard time about practicing. Like,
Hey, people always got something to say, right?
yeah.
Whether it's correct or dumb. People always got something to say. And so I've always worked hard and I think Brandon has pushed our sport for all of us to work even harder because, like Dominic told me earlier this year, he's like, man, like since you moved down here, my shooting's got better on the competition side because I'm working harder, I'm practicing more. And so, for me, I was like awesome. And the same thing with Corey, like he's shooting well this year too. Like he finished runner up at US Open and
Mhm.
so all of us working together, I think has, you know, s- started to raise our level. And, you know, for me, I always try to look back, like I was mentioning, Brandon being 38, he's got a ton of experience. For me, I'm always like, hey, man, I'm 34. You know, I'm still getting better at this game. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. That's a kind of the cool thing about this sport. It's not like other sports where typically your prime in most sports is anywhere from like 27 to 35, right? Where it seems like this sport's a little later. The more experience you gain, I
Right.
think the better it is for you, right? Where because it's not so physical, right? It's
Right.
not it's such a physical sport. It's more mental and eye and hand, right?
Hmm.
So, I feel like I'm still not even in my prime yet, and I'm only getting better. And, seeing guys like him and Anthony, Anthony being in his 40s and Zach in his 40s. And, shit, Zach didn't win a national championship until he was in his late 30s, right?
Hmm.
So, that's where it's like, I think I'm still getting better and I'm still yet to get to the best shooting that I've done yet. So.
For sure, for sure. So when you're with these other pros and these other top shooters in your area, are you guys hitting each other up and like, hey, I'm gonna go to the range, let's train, or like how does that play out?
Yeah, like we'll get on a group text now. Like me and Dom and Corey, we have a little group text together, and we'll like text like, "Hey, are you guys free? Like let's go to the gun club." And then, typically when we're there, we're talking and like planning like our next practices or our next times we want to go out and meet each other to
Well, what are you
practice.
what are you guys practicing on? Like, do you actually just go and shoot? Do you work on certain techniques? Do you work on certain target presentations? What's your training as a group look like?
Yeah, it just depends. Like, I feel like if one of us are struggling on a target, then the two others are kind of like watching behind the shoulder, understanding what he's doing and helping him, like, and telling him, like, hey, this is what, you're doing. Maybe try this and just, all three of us or five of us all have a lot of experience, especially me, Corey, and Dom. We have a ton of experience in the game and we all come from the same lineage in terms of methodology, right? We're all big pull away guys, right? Big Dan Carlisle guys. So I think that also helps that we all shoot the similarly.
You guys speak the
And
same language. You're all from the same
yes,
dojo. That's what I always
exactly.
like to relate it to karate for some reason. But yeah,
Right. No, totally, man. We all
yeah,
come to the same sensei,
yeah.
right? So, which is good, man. And I think it helps. And so we could just one day go out and all just, go shoot the course together and then, go back through it on the birds that we struggled on. And then the other two are watching the guy who's shooting, understanding what he's doing, giving him feedback if he's still struggling. Um, sometimes we go out and just grind FITASC. Corey specifically this year helped me with my mount on quartering and going away birds. Just kind of slowing the initial mount down. I don't think he gets enough credit in terms of how technically good he is. I'd never heard someone say, "Hey, man, like move with your ankles, feel the bird through your ankles." I'd never heard that until this year. which is crazy. And I've worked with Dan and Anthony. And so, I don't think Corey gets enough side on the technical side. Like, obviously, he's extremely talented and successful and accomplished, but there's a reason for that, right? Because
Right,
he
right,
understands the game at a high level.
right on. What would you say is your philosophy when you get in the box, like for your style of shooting? Like, how are you talking to yourself? How do you think about your pre-shot routine and when you're getting in there, like getting your mindset? Like, what's your philosophy behind all that?
Yeah, so initially I'm kind of paying attention before I get in the box. I'm paying attention to where I'm going to start the gun and where I'm going to kill the bird, right? Whole point, break point. And then once I get into the box, there's not a whole lot of thinking going on for me because you can't do sports and consciously think while you're actually doing it, right? You
Right.
have to have be in your subconscious and allow, I think that's where athletes do their best is when they're just in the flow state, right? And so once I figure out my whole point, break point, I'm just telling myself, look at the bird hard and be calm on the trigger, right? Be smooth on the trigger. Because obviously, if you're jerky on the trigger, it affects that into that barrel,
Hmm.
right? So my pre-shot is as I'm loading the gun, just telling myself, see the bird well, see the bird the clearest as you're firing the gun, right? As you're squeezing that trigger, you want to see the bird the clearest. So that's really all I'm telling myself. There's
Okay.
not too much thought going into it. Some guys are different. Anthony is a big thinker. I think you have to understand who you are as a person and a competitor
Yeah,
is most important because we're all different, right?
totally. Totally
And
agree with
so,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And so when like for me, when I initially started work with Anthony in 2020, I tried to emulate a little bit too much things that he does, right? He's very analytical person, and so for me, I needed some of that, like in terms of preparation, right? Like I'm like I'll think when I'm practicing, right? But like he told me, once you have exactly, an idea of what you're doing and make your plan, then go and just shoot and be
Right.
instinctual on
Right.
that side. But, my thing is know who you are because we're
Right.
all different. You can't copy everybody and expect to be successful. You have to take things from the best and make it your own in a sense.
I totally agree with that. I've taken so many lessons with pros and various coaches throughout, and I've gotten nuggets from every single one of them. I tend to be an overthinker, analytical thinker in my work, but when I come shoot clays, it's the last thing I want to do. It's
Right.
kind of my place of where I feel more free and clear-headed.
Yeah,
And I was always a feel shooter in the beginning, an instinctual shooter. I needed to learn the more analytical side just to understand like where build the foundation of analytics, but then like you
sure.
said, just start to feel the target and start to be into the feel part of the game. Because a lot of what you're doing and when you're finishing the shot is the feel, right? It's how it feels to
100%.
you and how it's unique to you. But I love your point about seeing the target the clearest. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do, right? So
Yeah.
the fact that you're having to remind yourself that every time, even though you've done this probably 100,000s of times, right, in terms of
Yeah.
shooting target presentations, that's the key thing. So why do you think that's the hardest part of the game?
What? What?
Seeing it clearly.
Mm, I think competition does funny things to people,
Hmm.
right? I feel like a lot of people that are not comfortable in that setting tend to act different than they do when they're practicing. I see a lot of guys that can go out and practice really well, and then it doesn't translate into the competition, right? Now, whether that's a mental thing or that's you're just not as comfortable as you are when you're practicing, whatever. But I think competition has a funny way of and pressure, right? That's the biggest thing, right? Is especially when you get to where I'm at in the game and you're shooting to win, right?
Right.
That's where, you know, you have to be your most comfortable. And it's hard, man, getting used to that pressure, but eventually you do. Like if you put yourself in that situation enough and you start to gain experience, then you start to get comfortable. But I don't know why seeing the bird clearest is difficult. I think it's sometimes we tend to go on autopilot mode where we stop even running. Some of us stop even running a pre-shot routine and reminding yourself because the game is just fundamentals like anything, man. Just making like once you get to the shoot, just make sure your fundamentals are good and make sure you're reminding yourself to do the right things, constantly. It sounds dumb and it sounds like just
Like,
kind of rudimentary, but
yeah,
you know, sometimes it's hard to do the simple things right.
right, right. I think that's why we all enjoy coming back to the sport and doing it over and over again, though, right? Because you almost kind of can't perfect it in a way,
Yeah.
as
No,
much
it's
as
a
you
lot like
try.
golf in that sense, man.
Yeah,
It's just a constant journey of trying to improve.
right.
So
What's one moment that stands out as a major personal win or a breakthrough in your shooting career so far?
I think for me it was the 2015 Western Regional in at Quail Point. I think I was in like my mid 20s, and
I was
prior
there.
to that,
Yeah,
what's that?
I was there as well. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Yeah, prior to that, I hadn't won a major title, and so for me, it was like I would shoot great the first day, and then overthink the next day and not shoot as well, and not end up winning the tournament. But I think for me, that was like a breakthrough. Ended up winning the tournament. I didn't shoot great the first day, but I closed like a champion, and I actually shot with Derek Mine that day. On Sunday, I actually didn't have a squad the first day, so I shot by myself the whole round. Didn't shoot great. Go get squatted with Derek. Me and him battled the whole freaking way. We ended up tying overall. Me, him, and Bill tied, and we got in a shoot off. And I definitely showed who I was
yeah.
in that shoot off, and ended up winning. And for me, that was like a breakthrough because it was my first
Major
big
win.
big event, major win, and it was at a gun club that I grew up shooting at. I was
Yeah,
on the junior team as a kid, so it was the first time I had been back since I had moved from Texas, right? So it was just kind of like a just like crazy correlation, and one of my family members had passed, and so I was kind of like for him in a sense,
mhm,
and so it was like damn, like just like three huge things for me, like kind of checked off my check some boxes, right?
yeah.
I proved to myself that I could get it done when it mattered most. I won at a gun club I grew up shooting at, and I did it for somebody who was extremely important to me. So,
No,
yeah.
that's awesome, man. I remember that. I was brand new to the sport then, only been
Hmm.
shooting 2 years. I think I started in 13, yeah. And so the 15, I remember that. I remember that shoot off too. In fact, I have some pictures from that shoot off somewhere in my phone. So that's crazy. But I didn't realize that was your first major win.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
first, that I consider a major win, and yeah, it just like gave
So you
me
were 24 when you won that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it gave me a lot of confidence. And, at the time, Derek was hot, man. He had just
Oh
won
yeah.
Dubai. He was rolling. Bill had won nationals. And so, hey, man, I was shooting against the cream of the crop, the best guys at the time. And,
Yeah.
and to get it done in front of a lot of people under a lot of pressure, and those birds were no joke. I mean, I think Derek shot 4 out of 8, Bill shot 5 out of 8, and I shot 7 out of 8 and missed my last target. And so it was like I was like, damn, like I try to, sometimes I try to stay super relaxed in the shoot off, and for me, your heart rate's a little up, and you want to win, man. When you're in that situation, you want to win.
Yeah.
We're doing this to win. Whatever people do, in my opinion, I think you want to be great at. And so it was just crazy. It was a cool experience, and it's something I'll never forget.
What do you remember about the targets at Quail Point? So Quail Point's my home club. That's where I go train.
Mhm.
Arguably one of the best clubs in Northern California for competition level targets. They also cater to, corporate shoots and stuff as well, but they also know how to turn it up when they have competitions going on. So a lot of us Northern California shooters will go there to train, to get better, to do it. They have tons of room and terrain, but what do you specifically remember about the targets that year, if you can? And I know it's 10 years ago, but
No, I remember them pretty well. I mean, they were hard, man. I mean, that first day we had quite a bit of wind, and not only were the targets tough, but if you're not used to shooting in the terrain, right? It's in the mountains. They got good terrain. The birds were big, man, and it was. I thought the second day was a little easier. I
Yeah.
shot 87 the first day and then shot 97 the second. So it was just kind of for me knowing that the targets are tough, you know that other people are missing too, right? So don't let it get to you too much and just stay in it
Right.
and keep grinding, right? And keep grinding it out. And, obviously that's what ended up helping me win was to not, initially get down on myself and like, oh, it's over. I shot 87. I can't win. I was like, nah, you know what? I'm gonna go out and lay it all on the line tomorrow and go try and get this done. So yeah, I mean, I remember it was challenging, man. I mean, what 184 was HOA, so
Yeah.
clear they're pretty stout. So that's what I remember most about the tournament and the shoot off. Damn, the targets are even tougher. So yeah, it was just I thought they did a great job. I actually trained there last summer before I went and won the North American FITASC. I was out in California for a couple of weeks doing some stuff with family. Trained there, flew straight there, and ended up winning the tournament. So I was like, damn, maybe I should come back here a lot more
You
often.
should. You should. 12 Point's great. I'm telling you, it's a great place. At the time, Matt Emig and his family were the target centers, and he's, in my mind, one of the best target centers around this area. Justin Hall's taken on that role now at Quail Point, and he does phenomenal target setting as well. He's really been a student of target setting and does. He listens. He listens to the shooters. He listens to what we want to see, how to do it, and he doesn't just trick us with speed and distance. He's using the targets, he's using the terrain, he's
Yeah.
really working it, and I really love shooting there. I know I'm overplugging QP, but shout out to Dave and Justin over there because they're really great
Yeah.
over there, and I really appreciate it.
No, they do a phenomenal job. In my opinion, it is the best club in terms of if you want to be a competitive shooter in Northern California, I think that's probably the best place you can go to train and get better. And it's great that, like you said, they got guys there that are setting the targets that are listening to shooters that are competing at major tournaments and setting stuff that they want to see and train on,
Right.
right? And so no, it's a great gun club.
So recently, there was another club that's entered kind of the mix as well, Golden State Shooting Centers, formerly Coon Creek.
Okay.
A shooter from Northern California has gone up there to be a target setter. I believe Will Bruce and his family are up there setting targets now. I think you know Will.
Oh yeah.
And that family up there who run the gun club has been doing competition NSCA registered targets as well. They're setting really great targets. A lot of people have been speaking highly of them. So that's been a growing and new
Where
club.
where where's that at, Henning?
Do you remember where Coon Creek is? I
I've
think
never
it's in
been.
Lincoln, if you're familiar with
Lincoln.
Lincoln. Yeah.
Okay.
So from where I'm at in the East Bay of the Bay Area, it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours
Okay.
north of us, but
Yeah.
it's kind of close, not too far from Quail Point Hunt Club as well, but maybe another
Okay.
30 minutes or so.
Cool.
So that's
Cool.
another one that's been coming up. So
I'll have to check that out next time I'm in California,
come up
man.
and let me know when you're up here, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So looking back, like on your past and everything, your current situation, is there anyone that you personally look up to in the sport, either past or present? And can you tell us why you might look up to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of the obvious names, right, that I think everybody looks up to. I think George Digweed is probably at the top of most of our lists now. I think for me, reason obviously accomplishment wise, right? Like,
Right,
no one's ever going to touch his records in terms of
right,
winning world titles, right? Um, but also his longevity, how long the guy's been doing it and how he's won in so many different decades and just his grit and determination. I mean, if when you see that guy win a super final and like when I saw him win his last World English in San Antonio, how much joy and happiness it brought him. And, he acted like it was his first one. You
yeah,
know, that was impressive to me, man. I mean, this
yeah,
guy still has the passion to go and work his ass off and strive to be the best he can be. So obviously he's, at the top of my list. A guy like Brandon, who I've known since I was 14 and shot with a lot. And He's doing his thing at the moment, man. You can only
Just
respect a
crushing
guy
it, absolutely crushing it. It's insane.
crushing it. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
he's a hard cat to beat, man. Even when he ain't even shooting that good, he's hard to beat. You know what I mean?
right,
So,
right.
him, and what I probably respect the most about him is his confidence. That guy is probably the most supreme, confident person I've ever seen shoot a shotgun.
Yeah,
He don't believe he even should miss a target, right?
right, right.
And so that's what inspires me probably the most about him. A guy like Zach, who grew up in the same area of California I did, and when I was coming up in the area, was the big name in the area. And what I respect the most about Zach was he never quit, right? It took him a really long time to win a national title, man.
Hmm.
But the guy never gave up on himself. He never gave in. He just kept grinding, man, and now he's a three-time national champion and
Yeah.
just a good dude overall, as well. And a guy like Anthony, who I call the doctor, right? Most of us go to him to get fixed, right? You go to the doctor to get fixed, or you go see Anthony to
Yeah,
get
he's the
fixed.
coach of coaches.
Coach of coaches, man. He's a guru.
Yeah,
Absolutely probably the biggest student of the game that we got.
yeah.
Super smart dude and really takes the sport well. One of the kind of the godfathers of the game, even though he's not even that old.
I
He's
know,
just
right? He's much younger than me, and he's
yeah,
definitely a godfather of the game.
yeah, yeah. And so I respect him. Just it tells you a lot about a guy who will bring up his own competitors to help them get better, even though he knows he's still got to compete
Right.
against them, right? It's one thing if he's out there just teaching Joe Schmo who have no chance on beating him, right? But he brings up guys like myself or Todd Hitch or even Brandon's taking a lesson with him, Zach, Desi, whoever it is. I mean, the cream of the crop of our sport goes and sees this guy, and he's got the confidence in himself and to, hey, I'm gonna help you guys get better, even though I know I got to see y'all on the weekend to
Well, let me
compete.
ask you something
So,
about that. So I asked him the same question as well. Do you think part of it is, um, when we talked about this in the podcast when I interviewed him, I think at a certain point, when you're talking to your competitors, knowing, getting in their heads a little bit is the next step, the next level of competition for you.
mhm,
There's the technical side of the game, there's the mental side of the game, and then it's understanding your competitor too, what their strengths, weaknesses, pluses and minuses are. And I feel like, it also serves Anthony in a way to
sure.
know who his competitors are, where their strengths and weaknesses are. And it's being as analytical as he is, do you think that helps him in his game?
Yeah, it might. I mean, it might, right? But you can't control what that other person does, right?
True.
It would be one thing from how I would look at it is if, say, it was a combat sport like boxing, to where you're actually going in and fighting this guy and understanding their strengths and weaknesses and using them against that person. But because Anthony's not setting the targets that we're shooting, and he has no control over how well or how bad you shoot, there's not really that big of a benefit to it in my eyes.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, he has no control over anything other than knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Right. Right.
Now maybe if he was setting the targets like he does at his tournaments, but he don't compete in them, right?
Right.
So,
Right. But
yeah,
I feel like it's the next level of information and intel for a
sure.
competitor, right?
Sure, yeah, I
So
think it probably could give him mentally an edge. Sure, yeah,
yeah, and as a
I can agree with
coach
that.
too, as a coach,
Yeah.
you're seeing how different shooters approach things differently than you do. Because if you're from Miyagi-Do, dojo, and there's a Cobra Kai, guy that you're working with, you're seeing how the two dojos work
Mhm.
towards the same conclusion or the same end result, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah, and it might help him, and I think also like. I think it serves him well as well and I think it gives him a pride like, hey man, all these top guys are coming to see me. And it also looks good on his resume too to kids coming up, right? Like, hey, I've worked with Theo Ribbs. Hey, I've helped Corey. I've helped Brandon. I've helped Zach. I've helped
Right.
all these guys and you see where those guys are at. What do
Yeah.
you think I can do to you?
Right.
right? I
Right.
think that's also a big thing on his resume too.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, he's clearly, one of the, if not the best clay instructors in the world now, and on top of
definitely,
being a top competitor too. So
yes.
being an instructor versus also being a top competitor, I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there that's probably
That,
doing both, at
no, he's
that
not.
level.
No one's doing it like he is. No.
Yeah. Right.
No, so that's what I respect about him. Like, man, like, hey, you're helping us get better, even though you know you got to see us. So
Right.
I respect that about him. And so I'd say those are probably the four guys that I probably are on my uh, top of my list in terms of who inspires me the most and who drive me to work hard because I
Right
know
on.
now that I compete against them on a regular basis, I know those are guys I got to beat, right?
Right.
And they're the cream of the crop. There's no doubt about that.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that they're going to be more and more folks kind of coming up to that level? Now that training's available, podcasts are available. Anthony touched on this, like, a lot of this information wasn't available to you guys when you guys were coming up the ranks.
Yeah.
And now it's readily accessible to everyone. Zach's got a video. Digweed's got multiple videos out. Anthony's got multiple videos. He's got a book out. Are you starting to see a rise in like new names coming in at the top level?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's the most competitive the sport's ever been.
Yeah.
I think that's probably due to all those things you alluded to.
Mhm.
And I think it's only going to continue to ratchet up, right? You got guys like Joe Finizzi, young kid, 22, badass,
Yeah.
hard work. Another guy who I admire at a high level, extremely hard worker, extremely competitive person, and very driven, you
Total
know.
gentleman too.
Oh yeah,
When I
super
met the kid
good,
when he was like
super good dude.
16, I was like, God, he's more mature than I am.
Yeah, extremely, extremely polished. Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt about that. Dom, he's still young. He's only 26.
Yeah.
Lane Piccolo, like I mentioned, Jonathan Prince. I
Mhm.
mean, there's so many young guys that, we have to deal with at the highest level now,
Right.
So yeah, I think it's only gonna continue to increase, man, and which is awesome, man. I love, competition. I love trying to beat these guys when they're at the height of their game, right? Because that's what gives you the most pride.
Right.
So, yeah, man, I mean, I think it's only going to continue to evolve. And, the craziest thing about this game, I feel like in most other sports is that you don't see the top guys working with each other in other sports because it's typically not like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But in this sport, we have no problem working with each other, and helping each other improve, which is a cool thing, man. I mean, now there's so many, like you said, mentioning how competitive it as the game is at the moment. There's so many guys that can win, man, more than ever, man.
Why do you think that's the case in our sport where the pros are willing to work with each other and learn off of each other? What do you think that is?
I don't know, Henning. I think maybe the camaraderie that we have, and I don't know. I think it's just a lot of good people, man. But I don't know why that. I think I'm kind of told that it's not like that in Europe, is what I've been
Okay.
told. In England and other countries in Europe, they're not really helping each other like we do. I was told that this year by an English shooter, and I was like, wow, really? He's like, no, man, we all just, kind of like, fuck him and this and that, and we got to go compete against him. And so, they don't see the game, I guess, how we see it. When I came in the game, it was kind of always like that, right?
Right.
And so, because like fist bumping isn't huge over there either. Like when we come out of the cage after we did well, run a stand, we all fist bump each other, right?
Right.
That's not really a thing.
Right. Right. Right.
So I just don't think there's that camaraderie that the Americans have. Um, because when we go overseas, man, I mean, we're very, we're like it's like, Team USA, and
Right.
even if you're not on the team officially, but if you're from the USA, we're all kind of riding together, and there's that camaraderie that we bring overseas that we have here. So,
Yeah, I think it's, it's a very inclusive community, if I'm
Mhm.
being honest. And I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but when I first got into the game, I, was one of, actually not even one of, I was the only Indian person around shooting clay shooting in my immediate community of clay shooters, right? And I'll be frank with you, like initially I didn't think I'd be welcomed. I didn't grow up around shooting sports. I didn't grow up a hunter. My family doesn't own guns. I didn't own guns growing up. It was something that was introduced to me when I was much later in life. I was 36 years old, and a business colleague of mine took me out. And I was just shocked about how much of a misconception I had of the community, of the sport, of everything about it, right? And I immediately got hooked. And it never really came up as a thing that I was the only Indian guy, right? Although, little comments here and there would come out and about, but for the most part, it was a very inclusive, accepting community. A lot of folks kind of took me under their wing immediately and wanted to help me and, coach me and train me. And they saw like a, small, tiny bit of talent that I had and wanted to, help me, progress it because they saw my passion in the sport.
Uh,
What's been your experience? I know you because right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're currently the only black professional sporting clay shooter in the game. Is that right? I
yeah,
can't think
correct.
of anyone else, right?
Yeah, I'm the only official professional black shooter in the game.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I've had a couple instances where I dealt with some racism, whether it was a person making a video of me being a gorilla or whatever, and things that have been written about me on social media where it's comments that were had racist undertones or connotations to them. But I think it comes with it, right? Most of these people are not used to seeing people that look like me, right? Most of them have grown up around all white people, and now they're in a sport with all white people, right?
Mhm.
So some of it's ignorance, some of it's, could be hatred of my skin color, whatever. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter to me. Like, yeah, I don't like it, right? But that's never gonna break me.
Yeah.
Trust me. You know what I mean? Like I'm a mentally tough, man. Like it's going to take a lot to break me and it only motivates me, right? So I'm a person that's very, very motivated on things that are negatively said about me.
Yeah.
Like if someone has ever seen the documentary, the Michael Jordan documentary, right? Where he talks about whatever was said about him in the paper or a person that said something to him on the court. Oh, okay, bro. That's what you think? Watch this, right?
Right.
So I'm very highly motivated on negativity and I use that a lot. I think that's part of the reason why I've been real successful the last couple of years and made Team USA last year. And because there was certain people that, whether I don't want to get too much into detail, but said certain things about me, or like I said, a video made about me, and certain companies in the sport not giving me what I believe I'm worth and what I've earned. And so I use everything as fuel, man. I think as a competitor, you need to do that. You know, you could let it break you, but you're soft mentally and you shouldn't be competing in my eyes if you let those little things get on, yes, let them get under your skin, but let that turn into something positive. Let that motivate you to go work your ass off. Let that be bulletin board material in your mind. When you, like for me, if I'm in a high pressure situation and I'm leading the shoot or something, it's very easy to shoot from like a position of like, oh man, these guys are catching me. What I now do is like I think about all those negative things that have ever been said about me, and they're in the front of my mind, and I'm like, I use that to stay in attack mode and compete in an offensive way. And so I try not to let the pressure get to me and break me in a sense. Where I try to turn it and use it in a good positive way so I can have a good outcome for myself because people that don't like you, the worst thing, the best thing you can do for yourself, and the thing that's going to affect them the most is be successful. Go
Right.
win. Go
Right.
put your name in lights. Go be all over social media. Go be in the magazines because that's what's going to get them real mad, you
Mhm.
know. And that's what I've learned. That's what I learned from my dad in terms of mental side of things. And a guy like Brandon too, Brandon Powell, he uses the same kind of deal. A lot of people don't like him, because of his attitude and his demeanor and his, cockiness or arrogance, whatever you want to call it. And so there's a lot of people that don't like him and are jealous of him, and he uses that to fuel him, because he's the best in the world at the moment, so he could really he has that target on his back,
Right.
but he's a smart guy and uses all the things that are said about him to drive him and to continue to drive him. And then my dad was the same way in racing. All these people, because he was, the first African American to ever do what he did. He used that to fuel him. And a big mentor of him, who he knew personally, was Muhammad Ali, right? And we all know the struggles that he dealt with through his career and life. And, I think for me, being around people like that has only helped me and made me a better man, a better competitor, and a strong person. Because in life, no matter what you're doing, Henning, man, we all go through ups and downs, but, tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Right. No, man, just, I mean, first and foremost, I'm sorry that you even have to deal with that kind of crap in 2025. You would think we'd be past that kind of mentality, but, two, I sincerely admire and respect the fact that you use that, I don't want to say pain, but it is kind of fucked up pain, pardon my French,
Sure, sure.
um, and then fuel that to be successful, right? Because
Hmm.
that takes, like you said, a strong person to be able to do that and not let it get to you over time, especially when people aren't doing it to your face. They're doing it, behind your back
Yeah.
or behind a keyboard or whatever the hell they're doing, right?
Hmm.
That's a whole other level of cowardice that I think is more prevalent than it isn't. Um, but no, man, I'm sorry to hear that you've had that experience. Do you feel like does that happen often? Is it more like one off, or like what has it been like for you?
No, in my 23 years, I've had three incidents.
Okay.
In 20 years of competing, I've had three incidents. So it's not something that happens very often. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, play the victim and like, everybody hates me. Most people in the sport love me and I get along with everybody and I typically don't have any issues with
Right.
anybody. But you're always like, I
There's
dealt
always
with it
going to
in
be someone, right?
yeah, I've dealt with
Yeah.
it in school. And so at a young age, you get kind of used to it. I can't go and punch people's lights out on the course because, I'm going to get suspended or having, to deal with some legal issues. In school, I used to beat people's ass if they had something to
Right.
say to me on the racist side. But now, like I said, I just use it to make them feel even worse because whipping somebody's ass, that pain only lasts so long. But when you're successful for a long period of time,
Yeah.
that's sustained pain for them, right?
Right.
So, that's how I look at it. And yeah, like I said, I don't want anybody that watches this podcast to think I'm trying to play some victim card or a race card. It is what it is, and I've dealt with what I've dealt with, but I'm no pussy, and I'm not going to sit here and cry. Like I said, most people in this sport love me, and I have lifelong friends in this sport, and
Right.
I'm going to continue to do it. It's not like it's taking the fun out of it. It's only made me tougher and only made me a better person and a better competitor. And
Yeah.
it's only made me want to work harder and get better, man. So like I said, I try to turn a negative to a positive and make myself the best I could be.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your experience, man. I know
Sure.
that that takes a lot in itself. And to your point also, I don't think it's systemic in our sport or anything like that. The community from your experiences embraced you. I
Hmm.
felt included and part of it as well. And I don't I think there's like one-off situations where this might happen, but I don't think this is the norm by any stretch in our community. But
No,
um,
and like you're saying, I don't want the comments that I made to
yeah,
deter people that look like me or look like you or Hispanic, Asian, whatever, right? I don't want that to turn them off from the sport because 99.9% of my interactions with people have been extremely positive. And like I said, these are people that are lifelong friends of mine, right?
right.
So, it's kind of just as the kids now say, old heads, right? It's like
Right.
older generation. Like you don't see it from kids nowadays coming up like Joe Finizzi or Jonathan Prince or Lane or whoever, right? It's
Yeah.
not as prevalent in their generation because they're much more diverse and used to seeing more multicultural
Sure.
people, right?
They're more
And
exposed.
more exposed
Yeah.
and things like that. I think it's just more ignorance, people that are ignorant
Yeah.
and don't have experience with people of other races and things like that. So.
So if you were to give a message really to anyone right now who's curious about the shooting sports, but they may right now feel like they'd be an outsider, like I initially did. I initially thought, oh, I'm not going to be accepted in that community. What message would you give to people now that aren't in the community about this community?
Yeah, I think the message would be that I think you should come into it with an open mind and don't, as minorities like me and you are, the first thing we always think about is like, how are these people going to accept us, yada, 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 right? So I would say, like I said, my experience has been a positive one, and I haven't really had too many bad experiences other than a few. And so, you're going to have bad experiences with whatever you do. You're always going to have
Right.
an asshole to deal with, and no matter, and whether it's in your workplace or in your neighborhood or whatever, man, there's always going to be that asshole, and that's just life. And
Right.
so, don't let that deter you. Don't let your preconceived notions tell you that, oh, this is a redneck sport, oh, this is only a white only sport, yada yada yada. No, take a look at me, guys like you, guys like Jonathan Prince, who's mixed race, he's Hispanic and white. We're all accepted, and if you have the talent and the work ethic, you can get to the top, man. That's what I love about the sport, man. There's nothing hindering you. Your skin color hasn't my skin color has not hindered me in terms of my success in this game. So don't, let, your thoughts of like, oh, this is just redneck sport and these son of a bitches back out here with banjos and yada yada. It's not like that, man. There's a lot of good people, a lot of intelligent people in this game and people that are open-minded. And so, yeah, I would just tell them go out to your local gun club, man, and get involved. And, because mostly people are very like, very welcoming. They
Right.
want new shooters and new people into the game, and so yeah, I would just tell them, don't let, maybe your preconceived notion deter you.
Yeah, I mean, if I did, I wouldn't have met some of the people that I've met, traveled to the places I have, made the friendships that I've made through this. And I know that might sound a little cheesy, but it's 100% truth. I mean, I've found something that's become my passion that I never would a million years would have thought I would have been into. And sometimes I think about it, if my buddy Sheldon didn't introduce me to the sport, what I would have missed out on had I not gone down that path, you
Yeah.
know? And I just can't even imagine it. It's just amazing, that I discovered this and was able to be a part of it. So I'm with you 100%. I think that's a great message. And again, I appreciate you sharing, your experience there. Speaking of the sport and kind of how it's been evolving, I've also noticed it opening up more to diverse participants. Not that it wasn't before, it was just not as well known before. Now that it's getting out there into social media, it's getting out there on YouTube. There's channels out there dedicated to teaching you about the places, the gear, the everything, stuff that wasn't around when you were starting out, when I was starting out, even.
Yeah.
And so that I think that's changing the face of the sport quite a bit as well. And I'm starting to see that more people are getting interested in it than ever, and I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, me too. And I think, also, one of the driving forces is going to, in the future, in my opinion, is going to be how financially, like, how how much money we start to make from this game, right? Because a lot of guys that look like me come from tough backgrounds, right? That's why kids choose major sports because they know it's an avenue to get change their family's trajectory. The generational wealth is a possibility in a lot of other sports, right? Where at the moment in ours, it's not, right? Most of the people come from money in our game, correct?
Mhm.
So I think as you see the money start to creep up like it's had in the last few years, I think then you'll start to see other uh, people of different
Demographics of
colors
people
get
come into
involved
it.
because
Yeah,
then it gives them incentive, right? Incentive's
right.
important, man. Money, you got to make money to be successful. And if we want to have a professional game in this sport, the money's got to get there. And it can be tough because guns are seen in a weird light, and on the news and things like that. And so I think the more that we can put this sport in a positive way, and that we're using firearms in a positive way and not shooting people, then
Right.
I think it'll continue to grow. But I think that's where we're gonna see the numbers really drive, is if the money starts to come in this game and we're starting to shoot for $100,000 a shoot or whatever. You start to see that, I think the numbers will really jump up, in my opinion.
Have you thought of ways, or have you used, kind of maybe your background experience or your platform as a professional to educate and break any stereotypes that people have? I'll give you an example. So I've brought a lot of people who have never touched a gun before, regardless of the political spectrum, right? But let's say I've also brought in, people on the left end of the spectrum into the sport that have never touched a gun before, and they're blown away that I even shoot the sport. So
Hmm.
just the fact that, a person of color that they wouldn't have expected to do this, is doing this. So have you been able to use your experience and bring people in or break stereotypes as well?
Uh, yeah, I guess I have. You know, I don't know if I've brought a ton of people into the sport that initially wouldn't be in, outside of my family members. But yeah, I mean, Henning, to be honest with you, I don't think, yeah, well, not that I can think of off the top of my head, man,
Okay.
to be
No, that's
honest with
fair.
you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's fair. I
yeah,
think, and I appreciate the honesty too. I think it's one of those things that it's going to take time.
of
To
course.
any kind of stereotype of anything takes time to break. There's a reason that stereotypes in there because there's always a little gram of truth to it.
Sure.
And in order to break a stereotype, it takes time to change that perception. So, it's a
Yeah.
work in progress for all of us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess like my girlfriend at the moment, like she'd really never been exposed to shooting, right?
Yeah.
And funny enough, the person who exposed her to it was Dominic's wife because they
Mm.
work as nurses together, right? And so she goes, "Hey, like, I shoot guns and yada yada yada." And I think my girlfriend really wasn't comfortable initially being around guns, and so now she goes out and shoots every now and again, and enjoys it. And so in terms of that, I guess, yeah, I've exposed her, Megan, firstly, and
Yeah.
now she's going to tournaments on a regular basis. And I don't think she ever had like a preconceived notion of like the people in the sport, but I think she had a negative outlook on guns. And so I think that has been like a positive, introducing somebody that would have initially not like gone out and ever shot, because of her dislike for firearms. Now she's involved in it, and I think her dislike came from when she sees kids coming into the ER being shot, from finding their parents' gun, and accidentally shooting themselves, or it's a teenager who was in the streets and ended up getting shot over drugs or whatever, right? So because of the what she saw coming into the hospital, I think she saw guns in a negative light, but now she sees them differently because of me and Megan and Dom, and so I think that's been a cool thing.
Right on.
Yeah.
What do you think some of the brands in the game could do to you know help drive more participation or tell these kind of stories more of folks like us, or I don't say folks like us, I mean folks that are shooters, not by you know uh, color, gender, race, any of that kind of stuff, just more of like telling the stories like, hey, there's shooting out there, it's a sport. What do you think the brands can do to get more people into it? Are they missing anything like opportunities to? do better outreach?
Yeah, I mean, I think certain brands need to now when they're say like on social media when they're running ads, use more people of color in your ads, right?
Mhm.
To show like people that don't have a lot of knowledge of the game, like, hey, like, look, there's people that look like you that are involved in the sport, whether it's recreationally or on the competitive side, right? And I think a lot of it also is on the sanctioning body too, to make sure that they put people of color not out front, but expose them. So, because at the end of the day, it only helps their business the more people that get involved in our sport, right?
Right.
The America's changing, right, in terms of diversity, right? There's much more people of color that are in this country than there was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, man. So it's all about I know everyone likes making money. So if you want to make more money, try to promote and try to put people that don't look, like your typical people that would shoot guns, in ads and promote that because it's only going to help you on the financial side and help our sport grow.
No, absolutely. I think our sport can only grow stronger when we're willing to hear each other out, see each other out, keep showing up for not just the targets, but for each other as well, regardless of
100%.
what background we have. And to be honest, I'd like to see the sports and the brands put more focus on women shooters as well, right? A
Sure.
lot of times the ladies are just like this afterthought when it comes to
Yeah.
prize money, when it comes to attention focus. And yeah, I guess one argument is, well, they're not hitting the top level score, but as far as their concurrent in their class and who they're competing against, they absolutely are competitive and they're doing well, and they're starting to climb up the ranks to beat a lot of the men competitors as well. So I think it's just a matter of time, when you're going to see an overall woman winner or champion. So
Sure. Sure, and that's a good point, man. And like you said, women need in our sport need not to be an afterthought anymore. They need to be in the front. And you need to use young women like Karen and Desi and Madison to as driving forces because they're young ladies. They represent themselves well, and
absolutely.
they do a hell of a job on the competitive side of our game. So,
Right.
like you said, get those women, out front and don't, let them be kind of an afterthought.
Right.
So,
No, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you being open and being able to be willing to talk about these types of things, right? I know it's not easy, but what do you got coming up next? Like, what's on your agenda? Any goals for some upcoming competitions? I know you just come off of World English, World FITASC. You just had the Western Regional. What's on your agenda now?
yeah, so next Tuesday, I'm driving to Louisiana for the South Central Regional. So my plan is to win that. I'm in a pretty good position to make Team USA for sporting since I finished third at the US Open and I had some top fives in my last two regionals.
Nice.
So man, my goal is to try and make Team USA. It's hard, man, especially in the position I'm in the Open. To make Team USA is hard. There's only four spots, man, and you got to beat out Zach, Anthony, Brandon, Gavin.
Right.
So you really got to earn your spot. And so that's my goal I would like to kind of go win that South Central Regional, and I think if I do that, it would kind of not guarantee me a spot, but put me in a real good position. And then after that, I have the Diamond Classic here in Houston at Greater Houston Gun Club, my home club.
I keep
So
hearing that's a phenomenal shoot, and I haven't had a chance to make it out there yet, but
yeah, I mean, amazing job, amazing gun club, amazing job that those guys do there. The targets are always good, the payouts are good, and it's just like a first class gun club. I mean, it's like a country club. It's beautiful, and yeah, I mean, I definitely would recommend you coming down for it sometime. So that would be next, and then after that, we'll be going to Rick Hemingway's Backwoods Quail Club for the Southeast Regional, and then we close it out with a national championship. So probably my number one goal is to win a national championship.
yeah.
I was close in 22, and I want to get it done, man. It's been a goal of mine since I picked up a gun. So that's the number one goal. Number two would probably be Team USA. So yeah, national championship is the number one.
Well, it'd be
So,
great to see you win it. I'm going to be there this year. I'm looking
oh,
forward to it
awesome,
myself.
awesome.
It's the first major tournament this year that I've done. I kind of took a little bit of back seat with shooting, but I'm looking to get back into it in 2026. And I'm also signed up for the Jack Links in February, so I'm looking forward to that one as well. Will you be there?
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Okay.
That's an awesome, awesome shoot.
I hear so many things about it. I'm super excited about it. Might need to get some tips on where to stay and do all that when it gets closer to that time frame. But
For
Theo,
sure.
thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. This has been a really eye-opening interview for me. I appreciate you sharing your experiences and kind of your background and kind of where you're headed. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Henning, for having me on. I really appreciate it, man. I always don't take these opportunities lightly because it's not only a chance for me to talk about myself, but talk about how I got involved in the sport, and also try and bring the sport up. And, so I thank you for thinking about me for your podcast, and I hope all the listeners enjoy what we talked about. And yeah, man, I hope we do it again sometime soon, bro. And let's go grab some dinner and nationals.
Absolutely. I would love that. Thank you.
Anytime, brother. Thank you.
Take care, Theo.
You too, brother.